Okay, so welcome to What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez, here on LaGuardia Web Radio, WLGR. And you'll notice that today's show, I started with a cover. There's two gentlemen doing a very nice acoustic version. I've run out of live feed of Marvin Gaye doing performances, at least those that are compact enough for the show. So we're today, both shows will start with covers. That will end with the traditional. And it's a special show. We're pushing the envelope as far as guests today because we have more guests on at one time than ever before. So if there are glitches with the stream, for example, you may have caught me introducing myself twice or introducing the show at the beginning. You'll know what's going on. I've got a little cheat sheet to just make sure I get everybody right here for today's guest. So first, we have two professors, Dr. Liena Vayzman of the Humanities Department and the Fine Arts Program, and Filip Strabrowski, Professor of Anthropology in the Social Science Department. They are currently conducting a class where they put together an exhibition called Connecting Threads, Fashioning Identity in a Global World. And the exhibition will be virtual. And they've brought along some of their students who we're going to meet, but I'll just say their names right now so you can get used to it. They are Samantha Brown, Jeancarlo Gutierrez, Tenzin Pelchok, Kerwin Philips, and Jessica Toomey. But welcome everybody to the show. I've told everyone about how I tend to break up the show, so we'll start by giving everybody an opportunity to talk a little bit about themselves. Folks, would you like to talk a little bit about your backgrounds or maybe some of your studies, particularly the faculty? Who would like to go first? Dr. Vayzman, are you out there? Maybe you want to start. Okay. How about you, Professor Strabrowski?
Sure. I think maybe
there you go.
Having some sound issues, but I'll start. So my name is Filip Strabrowski. I'm an associate professor of anthropology in the social science department. Let's see, I've been at LaGuardia. This is my 5th year. I'll be completing now, and I've been in New York for 15 years. I'm originally from Los Angeles, but my research has been primarily based in New York City. So I've been looking at issues related to housing and gentrification and urban planning. So I wrote my dissertation on the gentrification of Greenpoint, Brooklyn, very close by LaGuardia, and focusing on the Polish immigrant community and relationships between landlords and tenants in this process of gentrification. Currently, I'm still working on issues related to housing and gentrification and planning. I've been working a little bit on Airbnb and the impact of Airbnb and other digital platforms on cities like New York, as well as the master planning process for the Sunnyside Yards, the rail yards that are have been undergoing a process of a planning for redevelopment. So those are my interests, and that's all for now.
Okay. Dr. Vayzman?
Thank you, Professor Strabrowski, and thank you for having us on this show along with our students to talk about connecting threads. My name is Liena Vayzman, and I'm Assistant Professor of Fine Arts here at LaGuardia in the Humanities Department. I am both an art historian and a photographer, so both an artist and someone who is active in bringing art to the world, interpreting it, and working as a curator. That's what brings me to this exhibition project. I'm originally from Chicago, although in terms of original origin, which is a question with our exhibition as well, I was born in the former Soviet Union in St. Petersburg. So my family is Russian American, and I immigrated to the United States when I was 7 years old to Chicago. I went to public schools, community college, then I went to Vassar College, and then Yale for graduate school, where I earned my PhD in art history. I wrote my dissertation on French surrealist photography. I'm particularly interested in how artists can be activists in times that call for it. The subject of my dissertation, Claude Cahun, was a French Jewish queer artist who began working in the 20s and 30s as part of the Surrealist movement, but with the rise of Nazism, took a decisive stance against fascism and was part of the resistance on the German-occupied Channel Islands, which are off the coast of France. So politics and art and connecting art to global issues has always been an important part of my research. More recently, I turned my own research to making art as a photographer, which I've done all throughout my life. And I have recently had 2 solo exhibitions. One was at LaGuardia. The other one was at SUNY Peekskill, one of our cousin campuses in Westchester County, at Westchester Community College at their Center for Digital Arts. And I also make digital video projects from time to time. I should add that as a curator, I have organized a number of exhibitions, many kind of outside of mainstream institutions. I was part of an artist curatorial collective in San Francisco for a number of years. I curated for a place called ATA, Artist Television Access, which is a long-running independent media activist organization, art organization, also in San Francisco. I organized exhibitions for Art Space, which is a long-standing nonprofit in New Haven, Connecticut, and organized a video film, experimental film festival called Crystal Palace as well. But I've also worked within institutions, like I worked at the Brooklyn Museum and at the Yale University Art Gallery, which are major museums. So at LaGuardia, I teach a number of courses. The one that is involved in this exhibition is called Urban Study, Art and Society. I also teach our 20th century art class and have been involved in different ways in working with the archives on ways of involving students in experiential learning. Thanks.
Okay, great. So how about the students? Tell us a little bit about yourselves, your background. Who'd like to go first? I'm going to go across.
I can go.
Go right ahead, Jessica.
Hi, so my name is Jessica Toomey. I am a fine arts student here at LaGuardia in my 2nd year, but I also plan on pursuing art history after I transfer. Similar to Professor Vayzman, I'm really passionate about art history. I have a internship with the American Folk Art Museum that is exclusive to LaGuardia students only, which I found really fantastic. And yeah, I pretty much plan to pursue a career as a curator.
Okay, somebody else? Tenzin?
I can go.
Oh, go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, I'm Sam Brown. I'm a psychology major here at LaGuardia. And I will be attending Smith, COVID permitting in the fall, which is pretty exciting. And I was in Professor Strabrowski's cultural anthropology class. So we were able to I got to contribute to the exhibition in that way.
Okay. Someone else?
Hi, I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Tenzin, and I'm originally from Bhutan. This is my 2nd year in the United States, New York, and I am currently in Baruch College, and I graduated from LaGuardia last semester.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Who's left? Let's see. Kerwin?
Hi, yeah. So I'm Kerwin. I'm from the Netherlands. I moved to New York in the United States about 3 years ago. And my major is actually biology, so with many connections with art in there. But I do have connections to this project that we'll talk about later, probably.
Okay, and I think Ocean. You're muted, by the way, Ocean. Are you there? We've lost Ocean. Oh no!
I think
you're on.
This is Professor Vayzman. I admit that is my Gmail login that I had to use to log into Skype.
That's why the name isn't familiar. So I feel
that's right. You've just learned my alter ego on the Gmail verse.
Somebody's missing. Jeancarlo is not on the. Are you out there, Jeancarlo? No. Okay. Well, hopefully Jeancarlo will join us again. Jeancarlo's got a fascinating audio setup. Okay. So some folks have kind of maybe already answered this question, but I always like to find out, would folks like to talk a little bit about coming to LaGuardia? I mean, faculty, obviously, we could talk about, for example, Filip, I should have known because you've always come off to me as like kind of laid back, easygoing, cool. So I should have known you were an LA guy. But so how does an LA guy, end up in LaGuardia, for example? But everybody take a turn about this.
Yeah, well, it's good to know that I made a good California impression on you. Yes, I'm very laid back. But apart from that, I guess I was attracted to New York in part because it's very much unlike Los Angeles. And I moved away from Los Angeles when I was graduating high school, and I've never really lived there since. So I've lived in New York a lot longer as an adult than I have in Los Angeles. But really, what drew me to New York specifically was my research project. I had been doing research in Eastern Europe and Poland, in Warsaw, in sort of thinking about the post-socialist urban transformations in Warsaw. And I got to know a group of friends, artists, activists, etc. And I was pretty convinced I was going to write my dissertation about Warsaw. But 2004, European Union opened its borders, its labor markets to the east, and a lot of my friends left the city and the country. They went west or across the Atlantic. And a few of them ended up in New York City, settling in what was then a heavily immigrant neighborhood of Greenpoint. And so I visited them in New York City, and I sort of discovered this neighborhood that was still very much working class and immigrant, but undergoing variations. And this really took off after the rezoning of the waterfront, the North Brooklyn waterfront in 2005. And so I sort of changed my focus to New York City and to questions of gentrification here. I also began work as a tenant organizer using my Polish language skills, which also informed my dissertation quite a bit. And when I eventually got around to finishing the dissertation, I had been adjuncting at Hunter College. And of course, I saw the ad for a position at LaGuardia, and I applied and was lucky enough to get it. And it was a no-brainer for me. I wanted to stay in New York. This is where my research is. This is where my family is now. So that's how I landed here. And I've always stayed in this part of the city. So I moved all the way from Greenpoint to Sunnyside over the past 15 years.
It's fortuitous that your research is right over the river, Newtown Creek. Dr. Vayzman, you want to talk about coming to LaGuardia?
Sure. And thank you, Professor Strabrowski. It's very interesting to hear about your trajectory in crossing Newtown Creek, which LaGuardia has. I think maybe Kerwin can even talk to. The biology department is doing an environmental science research project on the remediation of Newtown Creek, which is a site that is being cleaned up. So it's our dividing border that is right there behind us. And that theme of crossing borders and crossing across boundaries is one that's endemic to this exhibition, and I guess to my own professional and personal life as well. When I was a graduate student at Yale University, which is about 2 hours away in New Haven, Connecticut, for the part of where you write your dissertation, that year I spent coming out as a lesbian in 1996 or something. So for me, a great place to do that was New York City. And so I was here at 96, 97, 98, living in Greenpoint, actually, and was somewhere in between being part of that gentrification because of like maybe a privileged educational or artistic background, but also I was in a relationship with a Polish Italian working class woman from Greenpoint, and that kind of rooted us to Greenpoint. Her father had been a sanitation worker, and we like lived in one of the buildings that was getting gentrified all around at the same time. So it was an interesting point to what Professor Strabrowski said. To support myself, I was teaching, picking up classes as an adjunct where I could, and I ended up teaching at York College, part of CUNY, in another part of Queens, out by Jamaica. And I fell in love with kind of all-access education and the diversity of our students, where I felt very comfortable coming from an immigrant background myself. So many years later, after I had finished my dissertation, and after that I taught at the Rhode Island School of Design up in Providence. Then I taught at the New School here in New York for a bit. And I ended up in California for a few years teaching at Cal State, at San Jose State, in a MFA program in photography there for a few years, being a curator. When I came back to the East Coast, I came for a postdoc at Yale and then moved to teaching at Wesleyan College. And then from there, I saw the ad at LaGuardia and was so happy to be back in New York at, this great urban university with so many programs and connections to the city. And I've been here for 6 years.
Okay, great. The students, I'm always interested to find out how people end up at LaGuardia, including our students. So you want to tell us a little bit about why you chose to come to LaGuardia and maybe some of the things that you did while you were here? I'd like to go first.
Are you asking the students?
I am asking the students. So I was going to start calling names.
Samantha Brown.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
I'll let you know how I got here. I've lived in Astoria for the better part of a decade now. And I was mostly a performer. I moved to New York from New Jersey, from the suburbs, to pursue performing and entertainment and music and all of that. And I still do that. I sort of realized at a certain point, though, I was neglecting the intellectual part of myself. And I ended up failing the math placement test. And I wanted to go to Hunter. And the way it worked out, LaGuardia was the college that was offered to me. And I couldn't have been, in retrospect, happier for it to work out that way. It's a part of my community living in Astoria. Being a part of a CUNY school too, I got to go to school for free. I'm getting a free college education. I'm now at the end of my second year, and through ASAP. So if anyone out there is listening, please look up ASAP, because a free education is invaluable. And I'm still sort of getting accustomed to my student self. I feel like I'm constantly surprised by the things I do. I had no idea I would ever be an honors student. If you asked me when I was in high school, I'm 34 now, so I'm also a quote unquote non-traditional student. So coming back later has been just a wonderful gift. And going to LaGuardia Community College is also it's so diverse, and there are so many narratives, and outside the classroom, there's just so much to learn. And I've also been afforded the opportunity to work with a lot of really supportive professors. But yeah, it was going to LaGuardia, completely changed the trajectory of my life. I had no idea what else was out there. So, that's how I got here.
It's a good story. Someone else?
Hi, yes, I can go.
Go ahead, Tenzin.
So as for me, I'm out of the United States. As I mentioned earlier, I'm from Bhutan. It's a small country between India and China. So for me, looking up colleges in the United States was all through the internet. And as for us, we applied to CUNY directly, the City University of New York. And from CUNY, I got accepted into 3 colleges. One was York College, one was Brooklyn College, and the third was LaGuardia College. And my major is business administration. So I laid out all the plans on the table, and I just adjusted what is most convenient, what is most best for me. So it was LaGuardia fit me perfectly because it was really affordable for me, being an international student, and also it was right near the place I lived. So that was the main reason I chose LaGuardia. And once I got selected, I looked up additional resources, and I found out that LaGuardia has a lot of resources, not just for students. As for Sam, for students over here, there's ASAP and other opportunities. And I didn't know that there were opportunities for even international students and out-of-state students. And I took courses, I took honors courses, and I became part of the honors program. And through that, I learned a lot. And in my last semester, I even got selected into the President's Society in LaGuardia. And yes, that is how I joined LaGuardia. Thank you.
Another good story. Oh, so the last two, Kerwin or Jessica, who'd like to go first?
Okay. So how I ended up in LaGuardia is when I was in the Netherlands, I decided that the track my life was on there wasn't what I wanted to do. So I ended up going to New York due to life circumstances. And since I was here, going to LaGuardia seemed like the smartest trajectory of my education because of just the price and the opportunities LaGuardia offers students that go there. I thought that LaGuardia would be a good stepping stone to my further education.
Short and sweet. Jessica?
Hi. Yeah, well, I also have a little bit of a topsy-turvy education history. After high school, when I graduated, I went to like private art school in Seattle and like took out loans and did the whole shebang. And that, I guess I sort of like crumbled under the social and financial pressure of all that and didn't really end up having a fulfilling experience. So I dropped out and came back to New York, which was kind of like thrilling and really just welcoming. And then after a few years of just working weird jobs, I felt as though like I needed to do something for myself, for my education and just like my artistic practice, which I'd pretty much lost track of. So I just picked LaGuardia because I thought it was cool, like cooler than the other schools.
How so? How is LaGuardia cool?
I guess just because of the location where it is. Like it's in Queens where I've always lived.
Right.
And I had a few friends that went there. Most of the people I know went closer to me at Queens College or QCC, but I didn't really want to stay in my area. I wanted to be in a place a little more urban. And yeah, I just feel like the vibe of LaGuardia is kind of very uplifting and just welcoming for all.
And full disclosure, Jessica was my student in, was it the short term, Jessica, or was it the regular, or were you in the spring, the fall class? I can't remember now.
It was Art in New York this winter session.
Oh, short
Yeah.
term. And she was, of course, a stellar student. And, just listening to everybody's story, it's been just quite, first of all, the diversity of this group with international students, but also, domestic students, age ranges, ethnicity, as always, is the case. But it's kind of exciting. And I also think it's kind of exciting. Samantha, you mentioned you're on to Smith after this, which is another opportunity that I don't think people don't necessarily know about LaGuardia, is that when students who do well here are offered opportunities into next steps. And Tenzin, being a business major, I can't think of a better place to go to than Baruch, which again, I think is an opportunity that's afforded through starting in a community college in CUNY and then moving on to the 4-year colleges. So I think that I think it's kind of exciting that diversity even in our faculty as well. I didn't know about Dr. Vayzman being born in was it still the Soviet Union? I guess it was still the former Soviet Union at the time. Philip, I've already mentioned your LA stuff, but
Yeah.
I also I'm guessing you're Polish, of the Polish descent. Am I correct?
That's right, half Polish.
Half Polish. Sometimes you got to come up here. I'll introduce you to my Polish physicist neighbor, who helps me cut down trees when he's not teaching physics at Yale. anymore. But anyhow, so I'm gonna give us a little bit more time to talk about the show by doing the station break now. This is LaGuardia Web Radio WLGR. The show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And I've got a lot of guests here, so I'll again return to my cheat sheet. They include Professors Liena Vayzman of the Humanities Department's Fine Arts Program and Professor Filip Strabrowski, Professor of Anthropology in the Social Science Department. We're going to be talking this next quarter hour now about connecting threads, fashioning identity in a global world, which is a virtual exhibition. And their students, who are Samantha Brown, Tenzin Pelchok, Kerwin Philips, and Jessica Toomey. We lost Jeancarlo Gutierrez due to computer issues. So let's hit the ground running. The deep dive about this. Who would like to kind of introduce the framework of the exhibition, its history, and things like that? Professors?
Yeah, maybe.
Go ahead.
Maybe I could start with that.
Sure.
So the exhibition, which is entitled, as you had mentioned, Connecting Threads, Fashioning Identity in a Global World. It will be opening next Tuesday, June 2nd, and there will be a virtual opening event associated with that. It's the culmination of a year-long collaborative and co-curricular project involving the Bard Graduate Center, the LaGuardia and Wagner archives, and students from my fall honors anthropology class, honors cultural anthropology class, and Professor Vayzman's spring art and society class. And the purpose really is to incorporate material culture analysis and museum education, which are both areas that the Bard Graduate Center is quite experienced in. But to incorporate those aspects of cultural analysis into our classroom work here at LaGuardia. So the idea behind this project, I guess, originated with an attempt to connect, in my class, connect ideas related to cultural anthropology with issues related to some aspect of material culture. So I chose clothing and fashion as a topic, as a sort of as a prism through which to think about cultural anthropological sort of concepts and ideas related to race, ethnicity, class, gender, etc. And in my fall anthropology class, I had students. We discussed fashion and clothing sort of more generally, but as their sort of final research project, I asked them to select a particular item of clothing to which they felt somehow connected, and to conduct research on this object through more traditional means of sort of book research, as well as interviews with family members, and to write a paper that explores the social life of this particular item of clothing or fashion. And by social life, I mean the sort of the social relationships that have gone into the production, consumption, disposal, and even reuse of some of these objects. And these papers then served as the basis for the exhibition, which would be then sort of curated and created and designed by Professor Vayzman's class. So it was initially planned as a co-curricular project involving two separate classes, which would not have direct communication with each other in class, but would rather communicate through papers and images and personal letters. So I provided Professor Vayzman with my students' papers, and her students then read the papers, and she can tell you more about the process from her end. But my students were focusing on doing the research and actually physically bringing in these objects. And initially, the intention was to create an actual physical exhibition at the Bard Graduate Center. They had actually committed a portion of their gallery space to a spring exhibition. And so we had students bring in their items of clothing to the archives at LaGuardia to be stored for a period of several weeks, and then to be eventually transferred to the Bard Graduate Center for the exhibition. Unfortunately, of course, COVID-19 happened, the pandemic, the shutdown, everything. And we had to sort of pivot at that point. I think Professor Vayzman could talk more about that decision and how we sort of managed to make lemonade out of this situation. But yeah, so my students have been involved in this project from day one, and at the end of the fall semester, we sort of passed the baton on to Professor Vayzman's students.
Take it away, Dr. Vayzman.
That's a wonderful introduction. Thank you so much, Professor Strabrowski. On the first day of class, which was in early March, as you know, we have like a trimester, 4 semesters a year system. So our spring semester, the current one, starts in early March. So I was able to meet with our students, and I handed them the notes that were written, letters really, that were written by Professor Strabrowski's students like Samantha Brown. And they kind of randomly got a letter addressed to them about the previous students' experiences and objects as kind of like a connecting thread or a connection between the two classes. And that was the beginning of like these connections between the two classes. And all our students were super excited about their objects. And my course, Urban Study, Art and Society, it's part of our urban study program, and it's quite unusual and unique and a good thing at LaGuardia that we have an urban study requirement for students to take one of the classes that deal with thinking about the city in larger context. So this is the Art and Society class that helps students think about the city, and with New York as our laboratory. Usually I take students to museums and public art spaces all around New York. But for this class, which was slated to be an honors class at the beginning, we decided that students would curate or organize an exhibition instead of going to see other exhibitions using the artifacts collected and researched by Professor Strabrowski's cultural anthropology class. So my class is charged with making decisions about display and interpretation in essentially practicing skills in a field called curatorial studies, which is a subset of art history where art historians learn to be museum professionals. So one of the sort of takeaways from this is that when you go to a museum, the objects that are arranged there, whether they're fine art objects or anthropological artifacts, whether it's the Museum of Natural History or the Museum of Modern Art, that people decide how those objects are displayed. They decide how they're shown or that they're shown at all. And there is a power dynamic in deciding what gets shown to the public and what's worthwhile to preserve. And that's part of the exciting thing in working in museums, that curators make decisions about history, about what objects and artifacts are kept by human society to be emblematic of our culture. And this is what this class is really engaged in. And that what's wonderful about this exhibition and our students' work on it is that we as a group have decided that these objects, these items of fashion, these clothing that can seem so humble, like a jean jacket from Samantha Brown or a pair of dancing shoes from a student from Ireland, that they are worth preserving and that they speak to larger cultural, political, economic, and artistic trends globally. Our students were charged with designing the exhibition, which was, as Professor Strabrowski said, originally planned as an in-person exhibition. Bard Graduate Center has a beautiful museum on the Upper West Side, just off of Central Park West, in a mansion, essentially, and they were dedicating this beautiful space with windows looking outwards with natural light. And we visited, and our first field trip was going to go to check out this space. And students started coming up with ideas for how to show fashion and came up with really inventive ideas about how to hang a sari so you can see its folds and color, and how to display for Sam's Brown's jean jacket or denim jacket, already someone hatched the idea that music would be playing around it for the association with rock and roll. And Sam, your own music writing and performing experience. So students hatched all these ideas. Then, as you know, when LaGuardia and CUNY went to remote learning in just a few weeks later, the whole project had to pivot. And we had like an executive meeting. Many things got canceled. And it's really a ray of light, a silver lining that we all decided, with the support of the archives, Bard Graduate Center, all of our students and administration, to move forward and to make this into a virtual exhibition. I think that the conversations we had at that point mirrored very closely what other museums were going through. I'm sure every museum in the world was having a Zoom meeting and figuring out what are they going to do with their fall exhibitions that were planned. All the logistics, where are the objects? Who is going to take care of the objects? How are we going to photograph them for the online exhibition? Can we even get back into the archives to look at the objects? Who's going to build a website? What does this all mean? What about all our great ideas? So all of those questions became part and parcel to the experience of the class. At this point, I will sort of let others speak, because I think that pivot has been really a defining feature of this incredible result, this virtual exhibition that is still called Connecting Threads, and that has taken a virtual form. My students were asked to write the interpretive materials. So, when you go to a museum, there is a work of art or an object, and then you want to learn more, so you look at the label, right? So someone writes that interpretive material, and education and interpretations become really, really important to museums as they seek to engage new audiences. So our students were asked to write that interpretive material in the form of a 250-word object description, and they gleaned information from the research papers written by the students who lent their objects. So students like Tenzin Pelchok, who is here with us today, and we'll hear from shortly, was one of the students who donated or lent his object. And Jessica Toomey and other students, and Kerwin and Jeancarlo and my students, then interpreted that object for the public. So that's how the students collaborated. At this point, I'll pass it back over to Hugo Fernandez.
Well, I'd like to let the students chime in about what the experience was like of participating in this. So again, who would like to go first, talking a little bit about the process? Samantha, I see you're on screen, so I pick you.
You got it. I was so excited to have, my ego is so excited to have like my thing displayed in this art. But once I got past that, I was really surprised by writing the research paper. Fast fashion was something I don't know if anyone's familiar with fast fashion, but it's something I've been aware of as a consumer. The ethical issues regarding that have always been something for me. I've tried to, make decisions on where I shop based on how they're treating their employees. This was the first time, like in an intellectual zone, we could talk about things like that and how that related to this denim jacket. For me, to connect that, and then also connect the story of, so for me, the denim jacket, it was completely, it was as a hand-me-down. It was something I got at sometimes girls will get together and we'll all put our clothes in and that we don't want anymore, and we take the things from other people we want now. And I had gotten this jacket in that fashion, but it was also as a Gap denim jacket, and I had to it's very hard for me not to think of. It was hard for me not to think of that jacket in terms of, well, where did this come from? Who made this? Whose hands made this? Who, and then as I'm researching denim in general, I realized how ubiquitous this fabric is. It was designed to, what was the story? It's an interesting story. It was designed because a woman, her husband was so large, she couldn't find clothing that fit him that was durable. And she commissioned somebody to make something that would, stand up. And that's how the denim jeans actually came into existence. But I feel like and this is true with most of my classes, I go into it, or I get assigned a project, and for this to have it to be an exhibit, I mean, that's really cool as a college student to be participating in that. But it always ends up being a lot more meaningful than I think we assume it will be. I think I don't know if you could really anticipate the types of learning that you do in these contexts, but all the time. But this for me was like a really interesting sort of a way to connect to the education in the class, but also things that are important to me as far as how I view, the way clothing is made, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay. By the way, we are going to look at some images, and we're going to also share the landing page for the exhibition. But I want to let the students who also participated have a chance to talk about their experience. Someone else?
Can we hear from Tenzin next? Because both Tenzin
Go ahead,
and
Tenzin.
Sam Brown are in the first semester class.
Right.
Who are the students who donated their objects for the exhibition.
Go, Tenzin.
Hi. So when Professor Strabrowski first mentioned to us that he's working on it is going to be a year-long plan, that half the project will be done by our class and the remaining half will be done by the following class, Professor Vayzman's class. I kind of got really excited because he kind of mentioned Bard Graduate Center and how, because I always looked up to opportunities where we went beyond our campus. Not because there are a lot of us who has been active in campus, but even we experience also plays a big part in our career. And when he mentioned, I was really excited, and I worked on it. We had the paper, but when the pandemic came, when we are faced with a new normal, I kind of got worried that, how is this going to go ahead? And I kind of got disheartened. But I was really happy when Professor Vayzman and Professor Strabrowski sent an email that they're planning to move it virtually, and I kind of felt really proud of it. But apart from that, yes, we started the class with a quote, making the strange familiar and the familiar strange. I don't remember it clearly. And that's when I realized the go is a national dress of Bhutan, which we wear in all government buildings for all official work within Bhutan. And when I started my research, and I was like, oh my God, this happens, this is how it is made, or this is a dying culture. And even though it is a national dress, it was the generation right now, they don't think of it as the same way it is thought before. So as I started the project, it got really interesting, and I got to know it more. And I even learned that there was some government sponsored academy to encourage this culture. So yes, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Yeah, and so folks, the audience has an advantage over us because they're seeing all the screens, and Chris is showing the website right now, the Go page, for example, that Tenzin was talking about, though we as participants aren't getting a chance to. So, Kerwin, Jessica?
It will make sense for Jessica to go next because she's the student in the Art and Society class.
Go, Jessica.
Wrote the blurb for the Go. Right, Jessica?
Yeah, hi. It's great following up Tenzin because I feel like we've only spoken by email, but I feel like I've gotten to know so much about him and just about his culture through studying this object that he was so generously allowed us to work with. And I really want to echo Samantha's statements about meaningfulness. Because all of these objects have just developed so much meaning to me. I didn't know what a Go was before I started this exhibition, just like many other items that we've been working on. And now, yeah, I just feel like they mean so much to me, and I've learned so much by writing about them and looking at them and looking for supplemental resources. And also working with the Bard Graduate Center has been amazing. Like, there was a point at which I was nervous about how the online exhibition was going to come out, but after seeing the way that they've helped us put this together, I'm just absolutely optimistic about the end result.
Could you please say a word or two about the kind of input that the Art and Society gave to the creation of the exhibition? We met with the designers and the web designer and the project manager at Bard several times. What kinds of decisions did your class contribute, Jessica and Kerwin?
Let me give Kerwin a chance. Kerwin, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I was going to want to talk about this. Throughout this project, especially in the final stages, we talked with the people from the project and used their expertise to create this website, and use their resources to help us. But we, as a class, had lots of inputs in what was eventually shown, such as if the page is still up, there
It is.
The layout of the website, the typeface, and the fonts of that is shown. Everything had been went through the class, and with the professional eye of the Bard staff, we were able to put together something that honestly I would never have expected at the beginning of this class we could put together.
I got to tell you that the website is it's gorgeous. I love these pieces, which are extremely colorful, floating in this field of white. And of course, I guess when you click on them, it takes you to the language and pieces like that. So I will tell you this: we got about 10 minutes left. So usually we reserve this time for questions. We didn't get a lot of questions on the Twitch stream this time, so I would say that it's an opportunity to just talk about quickly each person, thanks and next steps and things like that. We've got about 5 minutes, so who would like to try to wrap it up?
I'll go first, if I may. This is Professor Vayzman. I wanted to highlight the global nature of this exhibition. We have objects from Africa, West and East Africa, Ireland, Colombia, Bangladesh, the United States, Bhutan, Tibet, Poland, China, Morocco, Haiti, Indonesia, and the Kumari is from Nepal. And finally, we even have a Sanahi necklace from the tiny island of Guam. So, and that is just from one class of LaGuardia students. And so we have this idea of connection all around the world and all of these threads bringing the objects and people to New York City. And I think this theme of connectedness across the globe is very much endemic to all of our experiences right now with in response to COVID. So I think it just kind of brought together how connected we all are and need to be, and what we are capable of when we work together. Our next steps at LaGuardia.
You have a little map that shows around the world, where all the objects are around the world.
Yeah, when you click on map,
cool. Right.
This is
We've got it up on the screen.
World map. And so Jessica and Kerwin can speak to how much work went into making all the decisions, the design decisions from a fine arts perspective. Everything from the color of the ocean to the color of the land masses, to how to delineate the borders, to how to highlight, and then to put all the objects are placed on the map. As you can see, they're distributed all over the world. And when you click on each of these objects, you will be able to go to the object page, which has several professional photographs of the objects, which were chosen by students, the description written by the students, the research paper written by the students, and each of my students also chose a video or audio track, like music or a video showing how the object is made, as multimedia material embedded on the page as well. So visitors will be able to immerse themselves in the objects and see their interconnections. Next, for the collaborations, we hope that the collaboration between LaGuardia Community College and Bard Graduate Center will continue after this initial first project with Connecting Threads.
Quick goodbyes, folks, because we're running out of time. Goodbyes and thank yous.
Very, very quickly. Yes, I wanted to acknowledge all of the hard work that the students have done in both my class and in Professor Vayzman's class. Particularly given the circumstances, it's really impressive, and I feel very honored to be a part of this project. So all thanks and credit go to the students. But I also wanted to thank the Bard Graduate Center for providing the resources for this project and for also engaging with us, both on site at their location, giving us a tour of their gallery space, but also putting on workshops for my students and for Professor Vayzman students. And then, and also, of course, the LaGuardia and Wagner Archives, acting director Soraya Siegel-Lamour, Professor Richard Lieberman, who has been the director there for a long time, have been extremely supportive, and all the staff at the archives as well, in sort of introducing students to the archival process and giving workshops on archiving. And Professor Vayzman too for being part of this project and making it work. So thank you all, and thanks for having us on this program today.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to have to just say thanks to all of you for being on this show. I'm actually quite impressed with the work you've done with the faculty and the nuanceness of this project, the caliber of students and the work that they've done. You're all it's very impressive, and I think folks should check this out certainly. And I just want to, but we're out of time, and just to say, you've been watching What's Going On here on LaGuardia Web Radio WLGR, and today my guests have been Professors Liena Vayzman of the Humanities Department's Fine Arts Program, and Professor Filip Strabrowski, Professor of Anthropology in the Social Science Department, who are talking about Connecting Threads, Fashioning Identity in a Global World, which is a virtual exhibition online. They'll be opening next Tuesday, 1 week from today. And they brought along their students, who are fabulous students, Samantha Brown, Tenzin Pelchok, Kerwin Philips, and Jessica Toomey. And sorry again to Jeancarlo Gutierrez that you've got bumped on. I've been your host, Hugo Fernandez. And thanks for watching and listening. And thanks again, everybody, for coming. Chris, take us out.